Hello, welcome back. This is Stud Muffin 1986, and today I thought I would do an interesting video on some of the worst performing tanks in World of Tanks Blitz. This can be found on the World of Tanks Blitz Stars website if you go there and take a look at the data. Sometimes this is actually quite interesting to look at, as maybe sometimes some of the worst performing tanks in the game aren't maybe what you'd expect. A lot of these are some that I actually did expect quite a bit. And these are primarily based off of win rate. So those top 10 tanks that have the worst win rate in World of Tanks Blitz currently. So starting things off here is the Tier 7 German tank destroyer, the YAG Panther, which wasn't really a big surprise to me that this was one of the worst performing tanks in the game, for a few reasons. I think most people that play this tank are those that are actually grinding, trying to get to the Tier 10 Yagaroo, and then after they get done grinding it, they never play with it again. This is also one of the most common tanks that I see misplayed. Always up on the front lines, has very weak armor, but there's nothing really wrong with the tank in my opinion. I think it's got good cannon. I think it's well balanced. It can perform and fulfill its role well. But yeah, one of the top 10 worst performing tanks at number 10 at a 47.12% win rate. Okay, and next tank up, number 9, worst performing tank in Blitz is the STA-1 with a 47.09% win rate. This tank actually surprised me a little bit because when I had played this tank, it's been a long time. I actually thought it wasn't too bad. I had a decent experience with it, and since I haven't played it in such a long time, I don't know what is causing this tank to have such a low win rate. But yeah, 47.09, the 9th worst performing tank in Blitz. Number 8 is the Tier 4 French tank destroyer, Smua SAU-40, with a 46.93% win rate. And I would have to contribute this thing's win rate to its massive cupola on top. One of the biggest cupolas in the game. Anyone playing this thing, number one, it's a low tier. So most likely newer players playing this thing. And when trying to come up and approach, trying to peek over hills, this thing is going to be peeking up over the hill and taking a while to come up over the hill. And enemies are going to get plenty of shots off this massive thing on top of your tank before you can even finish coming up over the hill and getting your cannon to peek over and get shot. So this one didn't really surprise me a whole lot. And 9, 8. And then number 7 is the Panther M10 Tier 7 German medium tank with a 46.88% across players. This one also actually surprised me a little bit. I have this tank and I haven't really played it in a long time. The thing about this tank is it has a great rate of fire. But it is a bit on the slower side, so I guess I can see how that makes a little bit of sense. But yeah, I was actually kind of surprised that this one fell on the top 10 worst performing. Next up, 10, 9, 8, 7. Number 6 is the VK30.02M. This one is now a collector's tank in the game. This one used to be in the tech tree, but no longer. Has a 46.80% win rate. And this was a tank, I don't know. I personally like this tank. I did really well. But being it is one of those lower tier tanks, Maybe it was just newer players playing, relying on their armor a bit too much when being a medium. I'm not 100% sure, but it is, and it fell on this chart. Number 5 is the Stauer Emil, Tier 7 German tank destroyer, at a 46.26% win rate. And this one, I guess I can kind of see how players would, this one would be on the top 10. I actually kind of enjoyed this one, but you can get yourself in some pretty funky and bad situations with this tank if you're not too careful. The thing that's super impressive about this tank is its gun depression is amazing. So really utilizing that gun depression, peeking up over those steep hills, really gives this thing an advantage. But you can easily get flanked in this thing. This thing is paper if you don't play it correctly. So, yeah. Next up, number 4 is the Indian Panzer, the German Tier 8 medium tank with an average win rate of 46.25% win rate. This one actually was one that surprised me a little bit because the armor on this thing really isn't too bad. I haven't really played this thing also in a long time, but the armor isn't too bad, and I actually didn't think this one would be on the top 10 worst performing tanks. Yeah, primarily because even if there's a lot of newer players playing this thing, its armor's not too bad. It's got a pretty good cannon from what I remember, but maybe I need to go back and play this thing again. Maybe it's not as liked as I guess maybe I would have thought. So that's number 4. Number 3 is the M26 Pershing, the Tier 8 American medium tank. This one also maybe kind of surprised me a little bit. I mean, I know it's also on the slower scale, so kind of seeing a pattern here. Maybe medium tanks that are a little bit slower don't perform very well, but there's also a lot of other medium tanks that have just about the same speed and maneuverability from what I believe, and they're not on this top 10 list, so I'm not 100% sure what's going on. The M26 Pershing's gun depression isn't bad. It's got okay maneuverability. Its turret's okay. I don't know what it is. But I think, honestly, there's a lot of... all the experienced players don't go back and play with these tanks. I mean, these are in the tech tree. Once they grind through them and they get to the next one, boom, they're done. And I think maybe the only people playing these tanks are people genuinely trying to grind and just get through them, and then they don't ever go back and play with them again. Because there's a lot of other Tier 8 tanks in the game that are a lot better and probably more fun. Number 2 is the Chiron MK1 Tier 8 British medium tank with a 45.77% win rate. This is also a tank I have not played in a long time, and from what I remember, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I didn't have a good experience playing with this thing. I can't remember, like I said, what it was. My brother actually is in the middle of grinding this thing, and he hates this thing. So I can't remember. Maybe I'll have to talk with him a little bit about it. But yeah, number 2, the Chiron MK1, British Tier 8 medium tank. There's another one on here, but it doesn't show up. I think there's only like one player. I don't know why it's in the Wargaming's Tankopedia. So can't really give any data on that. But number 1, the worst performing tank in World of Tanks Blitz. This one, honestly, did not really come across as a surprise because I remember playing with this thing, and this thing just purely was not a very good tank and a very good experience when I was trying to grind this thing. But it's the German Tier 8 medium tank, the Panther II. With a 45.30% win rate. This thing, in my opinion, is a little painful to play with. A lot of it had to do, if I remember correctly, was the maneuverability of this thing is really poor. It has terrible maneuverability. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I actually thought this was quite interesting to go over, and hopefully you found it just as interesting as well. Maybe it's best to stay away from these tanks. Maybe try not playing with them. The average win rate across these top 10 worst performing tanks may be saying something. So if this is the next one up on your list to grind, maybe in the tech tree line or whatever the case may be, good luck to you. But anyway, Stud Muffin 1986 here. If you haven't participated in the event I've got going on right now for the raffle to win the Cromwell B, watch my previous video and subscribe. Once again, Stud Muffin 1986, and keep tanking.